Hey, how are you? Slice of Otaku, and it's time for us to talk Quirk evolution. For those of you who may be new to the series, what we do here is analyze the respective quirk development of various lesser focused My Hero Academia characters in an attempt to predict the most probable ways in which their quirks will continue to mature. In the last one, we burned through Mina Ashido's acid quirk, so if you've yet to see it, I highly suggest you do, as she's actually pretty remarkable. But with this one, we'll be fulfilling the request to cover the jet black hero, Tsukuyomi, otherwise known as Tokoyami Fumikage, and his quirk, Dark Shadow. So, the possession of Dark Shadow classifies Tokoyami as an emitter type quirk wielder. However, he is quite obviously a heteromorphic human with a bird-like head. Dark Shadow is described to be a monster of a familiar powered by darkness, and with that, its power and size are proportional to its exposure to said darkness. Dark Shadow can certainly be used in brighter environments, however, it will gradually weaken and shrink under such circumstances. Not only that, but Dark Shadow is actually sentient, even being capable of speech. What's even more astounding is that due to their umbilical cord-like connection, Tokoyami and Dark Shadow are able to communicate with one another telepathically. And so, when it comes to the avoidance of danger or reconnaissance, Dark Shadow is pretty amazing. And with all that in mind, Tokoyami's quirk happens to be a rather abstract one, allowing for Horikoshi to be pretty creative with his character. And what's more is that with Tokoyami's serious approach to self-improvement and the development of his skills, despite literally keeping to the shadows of the story, he has grown considerably. I mean, ever since the beginning, he has at the very least been within Class 1A's top 5 strongest, and has gone on to only further solidify himself as someone to look out for. And at this point in the story, Tokoyami has interned under the number 2 hero Hawks twice now, and has been acknowledged by him for his potential, which we can clearly see as well, as now, rather than simply casting Dark Shadow off to do his bidding, Tokoyami has his super move, Black Ankh, in which he cloaks his own body with Dark Shadow as if it were armor, which results in an absurd boost to his physical prowess, further diversifying his applicability in terms of one-on-one combat. And even more so, with Black Fallen Angel, a technique he created by studying Hawks, he's even achieved flight by allowing Dark Shadow's arms to wrap around his body and simulate the flapping of wings, as Dark Shadow is able to morph its shape to some extent. So despite his reserved nature, Tokoyami is somewhat of a creative genius. Now, although Tokoyami has already made some incredible strides in the furthering of his own abilities, the issue of light exposure still stands. It's this major weakness that actually goes both ways. If continually exposed to excessive light, Dark Shadow is said to become more useless than a cockroach, and on the flip side, if provided with too much darkness, Dark Shadow becomes power crazed and uncontrollable, with power comparable to some of the most destructive forces we've seen in the series thus far. The cape portion of Tokoyami's costume certainly helps, but I feel like this issue is beyond that. First and foremost, in the case of excessive light exposure, I think it'll come down to Tokoyami's awareness of his surroundings. With him being such an attentive learner, having acquired the ability of flight by simply studying the likes of Hawks, I could certainly see him doing something similar with his Class 1B rival, Kurohiro, and his quirk, Black. And not the race card. Kurohiro is actually able to merge with anything black. Now, as for Tokoyami's possible rendition of this, when met with a lingering source of light, you will in most cases also be met with several shadows. And because Dark Shadow is powered by darkness, in theory, those should all be potential sources of power for him, like little charging stations scattered across the battlefield. And I think a development like this could just take Tokoyami's fights to new tactical heights. Now, when it comes to a lack of light, the only issue there is the inability to control said power, because if he could, he would probably be top tier and one of the strongest characters in the entire series. But he just can't handle it right now, and that's because Dark Shadow is very much like an untrained guard dog. No matter what, even when in its most destructive state, Dark Shadow protects Tokoyami. And with the two being bonded on both a physical and telepathic level, when Dark Shadow has access to too much power and the words of Tokoyami become meaningless, his emotions provide the only instruction available. And so when Tokoyami harbors any sort of negative emotions, whether they be anger or fear, Dark Shadow will react negatively and protectively. Dark Shadow, in its most monstrous state, becomes the embodiment of Tokoyami's self-preservation instincts. So if he ever hopes to achieve mastery over this ridiculous power, he must be able to be as stoic on the inside as he regularly portrays himself to be on the outside. And I get it, this is really hard when Dark Shadow could potentially hurt civilians or your comrades, and so above all else, Tokoyami cannot fear his own power. He cannot fear the wrath of Dark Shadow. But once again, considering prior to UA you wouldn't normally be able to fully utilize your quirk, it is understandable why he is this way, and if anything, how far he's come in such a short time is only more commendable. And I'd also like to think that once he achieves that level of self-acceptance, he could completely synchronize with Dark Shadow mentally, and maybe they could even swap places. That last part isn't all too necessary, but I just think that a frenzy berserker Tokoyami clad in black ink armor would just be savage. Tokoyami's whole situation with Dark Shadow is very akin to Venom or the symbiote from Marvel Comics in several ways, so I wouldn't be surprised if Horikoshi used this as a basis for inspiration at any point, which just hypes me up even more to see what else is in store for this character, because Venom is sick. The symbiote is one of the coolest things in Spider-Man. And at that, I would personally love to see the furtherance of Dark Shadow's shape alteration, because I don't see why it has to be limited to only 2 arms or anything like that. And I mean, the overly outstretched way it tends to be used just feels very base level to me. So if it could outstretch appendages from all over or anything like that, that would be insane. But yeah, that is Tokoyami's quirk evolution. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, because for me, it is a really interesting subject to ponder. If you'd like to see more quirk evolution videos, let us know in the comments along with who you'd like us to cover next. Beyond that, there's plenty more My Hero content to see from us across the board, so if you like this one and you know anyone else who loves the show, or Tokoyami in particular, it would be awesome if you could share it with them. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.